There are some horrific abuses of young girls being uncovered in the Epstein files. So horrible, in fact. We're seeing videos. These are redacted videos, but they appear to be underage girls being forced to model or show themselves off or even perform sexual acts for the cameras, some with other people. These are all coming out in the files. And yet, where are the investigations? Where are the arrests? Why are we not seeing more? Why is it that this administration wants to just sweep this under the rug and call it a Democrat hoax? Pam Bondi herself admitted that there was a ton of child porn in these files. Watch this.
There are tens of thousands of videos of Epstein with children or child porn, and there are hundreds of victims, and no one victim will ever get released. It's just the volume, and that's what they're going through right now. The FBI is diligently going through that. I haven't seen that statement, but I'll call him later and find out.
Thomas Massie also recounted a time that he had dinner with Pam Bondi, and she said that it was just disgusting porn and nobody wants to see it.
Really happened back at the DOJ when Pam Bondi invited Jim Jordan and all the other Republicans on the House Judiciary Committee to come over for dinner. And they had DOJ China. Now, Pam Bondi didn't create the China. She was surprised to find out that the DOJ had China. But it had been decades since the DOJ had invited Congress to come over, and it was to be a cordial dinner, and it was cordial. And before I went there, it was actually my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, I said, Jim Jordan told us we each get to ask one question of Pam Bondi, that she'll take questions. And I said, what do you think I should ask? And she said, ask her when the next phase of those binders is coming out. And I said, I'm not going to do that. This is a cordial dinner. It's to kind of, associate names with faces and develop a basis for cordial correspondence and whatnot as the administration goes on. But as the day got nearer, I decided that is what I should do as I started looking at what wasn't getting released. And so she was making more and more statements in the public. And so I asked Jim Jordan, I said, do you care? I want to let you know this is the question I want to ask her. And he said, you do you, Massie. I'm not going to tell you what to do. And so sure enough, seated at the table, I think it may have been Todd Blanche between me and Pam Bondi. The most senior members of the Judiciary Committee were seated kind of across the table from them. But somehow I ended up on this very long table, very near Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche. And I chatted with them too before we sat down. There were some other people who were there that I don't want to disparage by mentioning them, but because they didn't have anything to do with the Epstein files. In any case, I asked the question. I asked Pam Bondi, when could we expect to see the next tranche of these files? And she told me that all that was left was child porn, and it was really disgusting, and nobody wanted to see that kind of stuff. And if I were you, if I were a reporter, there would have been a follow-up question, but this was a cordial dinner, and I just at that point I realized she has no intention of ever releasing any more files. And so I had to go back and tell my girlfriend the next day, guess what? She said there's nothing left. After having said there was, tons of this stuff on her desk that she had found. So that was the seed that eventually germinated later that summer. That became the Epstein Files Transparency Act.
Yeah.
Well, thank goodness Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna are actually the ones doing their jobs. I mean, these guys are heroes. Pam Bondi sitting there saying, yeah, there's a bunch of child porn. And then suddenly, nothing to see here. What are you talking about? That is one of the number one things people want all Americans, both sides of the aisle, want predators like this to be taken down. And yet now you're saying, yes, there was a bunch of child porn, but now there's nothing to see here. Well, now that we're getting the files, we're seeing that it does appear that there's quite a bit of child porn. And it also appears that there's a lot of extremely disgusting conversations, extremely concerning emails, in fact. Let me play for you this clip. This is Mario Nafal's show. He had on Dr. Garrison, who is a psychological and body language expert. And they talk about an email where a woman accused Jeffrey Epstein of offering to buy her baby. Watch this.
I'm not sure if we've mentioned it briefly in one of our previous discussions, but it's a long email about a girl talking about, she seems upset by seemingly he's not supporting her. She talks about how he promised to support her. He promised to be there for her. And she never asked for money. And now, she's not supporting her. Someone could, if people want to read it, they could read it themselves. I'm kind of summarizing it, but the end is the one that is really questionable. Mm-hmm. You made many unusual offers. You offered to buy my baby 6 months into our relationship, and 6 years later, you offered to support my ex-boyfriend. You offered to buy my baby. So Jeffrey replies to that long message by saying that would be arguable, except for the fact that, again, it is not like a contrary position does not exist. It exists over and over. Yes, you didn't like taking cash, but took everything else, which is your point, JP. You said anything that could be incriminating, he avoids. This is a perfect example. It's a long message. He avoids 95% of it, especially the part, including the part where she says you offered to buy my baby 6 months into our relationship. What do you make of this, that highlighted part?
Well, I think I take it very literally. I take that at face value. I believe that he literally offered to buy this person's child, because had he not, and he had been like, excuse me, I didn't offer to buy your kid, that would open up the door for her to send details. Oh, yes, you did. It was in September of blah, blah, blah. Then she could provide details, and that's the last thing he wants. So he just ignores it. He, has whatever sort of vague, everything he says is incredibly vague right here, actually. It doesn't address anything. And that's the way that he replies to things like this. Just shut up and, make sure not to address any of these kind of things. But yeah, I think that's literal.
Why do you think he wants to buy the baby? Is it something to do with eugenics? Or some people, the most sick conspiracies or theories, sorry, I'm not going to use the word conspiracy now. I apologize. I don't like using that word anymore after these files. Yeah. Another theory is apparently injecting a baby's blood into you is good for longevity. So that was a theory that was used.
Sure.
What would you go with?
Eugenics is far too kind. There's no way in hell that he would buy a child for that reason. Like, if they wanted to do some weird genetic stuff, I think they'd have other ways to do it. I don't even know what he would be buying a baby for. That's anybody's guess, but I do believe he literally was trying to buy one. What he would end up doing with it anything I can say just horrifies me, frankly. So I don't know if he would sell it to somebody else. Like, what the hell would you do with a baby that you bought that you don't plan to raise as your own?
There's a lot of really, really terrible conspiracies or ideas, not conspiracy theories. I'm saying actual conspiracies of what Epstein may have been doing with babies. Just warning, this is quite graphic and very disturbing, but the dentist chair, do you remember the dentist chair that Epstein seemed to have in his, on his island with all the creepy masks around it? And reportedly, Jeffrey Epstein had donated a lot of money to Columbia University to get his girlfriend or whoever it was into the dental school. And then she worked as Jeffrey's dentist. And there's a lot of emails of people going to the dentist, a lot of dental work going on for whatever reason. Very bizarre that Jeffrey Epstein would have his own dentist and that people would want to go to that dentist. One of the theories is that there was there seemed to be some alluding to in the emails and the files that they were removing the teeth of children. That one of the things that the dentist would do is remove the teeth of children so that the children couldn't bite, and that would be during sexual acts. For babies, buying a baby. Some people are saying that the issue is a UCLA. So there was one of the emails where a UCLA professor who researches the brain and music, had an email exchange with Jeffrey Epstein where he basically said that if you play the sounds of the mother, that, like play the sound of the mother's voice, that they found in studies that preterm babies would suck pacifiers more vigorously. So they would suck harder when they heard their mother's voice. Now, why would a UCLA professor be emailing something like that to Jeffrey Epstein? And then Jeffrey Epstein, we see in other emails of him offering to buy babies. And what we also know now from the emails is that Jeffrey Epstein and people in his circle were connected to foreign orphanages, foreign modeling agencies, adoption agencies, like foreign, it seemed to be, well, certainly foreign modeling agencies, but one could then deduce that there was some, how did he get these kids? And people here in the United States would know their kids are missing. They would report missing children. You wouldn't be able to get away with that. But what you could do, if you had a lot of money and you had your own private planes and you had all the connections in the world, literally, you could effectively get children from Eastern Europe, from Estonia, Latvia, Ukraine, poor areas in Eastern Europe, children that are in orphanages or children that end up in modeling agencies whose parents aren't either existent or turn a blind eye or negligent in some way. And you could get these kids somewhere else in the world and disappear them. And nobody would know. People that put their children up for adoption, let's say, or maybe the parents died, would think and hope that the child ended up in a loving home because that's where they were said to have gone. Or maybe they put them in a modeling agency and the modeling agency says, oh, good, the good news is she's now a successful big model in New York. We shipped her off to a New York agency and now she's living the big life in New York. No, never to be heard from again. Effectively disappeared. That is not outside of the realm of possibility, considering the connections Jeffrey Epstein had, the amount of money, and the amount of privacy he was able to cultivate around his life, including a private plane and whatnot. Here's a description that I'm going to read to you. This is really shocking. This is also found in the files. This file seems to be part of the investigation or some report. And I'm just going to describe for you the bottom footnote there in blue that's highlighted. I'm going to describe for you what this is describing. This is the photo that's been redacted. The photo shows a girl, her face visible, who looks prepubescent with medium-length dark hair. Several Caucasian men are holding the girl's legs spread open. Her vagina is visible and gashed. There is blood coming out. In the photo's foreground, a man with a white shirt appears to be inserting his hand or something into her vagina. A round imprinted symbol of some kind is visible on the girl's leg on the underside of her left thigh. In the photo's right-hand corner, there's an arm with the green shirt visible. An arm holds the girl's knee in the air in the photo's left foreground. There's a profile of a man with long sideburns, a beard, and a small bald spot on his head. In the photo's background on the left appears to be the unclothed top torso of a man. A man with what appears to be a black t-shirt and blue shirt appears to be on the left of the girl. On the photo's lower left, there's a green structure, which is hard to identify. The girl's mouth looks bloody. Her tongue is extended. There's a bruise on her left eye, a red mark on the left side of her neck. Her left shin is bleeding. Purplish bruises on her abdomen. Caucasian men, so white guys. This is not, a group of Pakistani rape gang in the UK. No, this is a group of white men with a prepubescent girl, so under 12, who has dark hair. So one could think maybe this girl was taken from Eastern Europe, for example, brought here to be abused. And Pam Bondi acknowledges that there is child pornography, disgusting child pornography, and yet now the administration refuses to investigate. You have got to be kidding me. They have a photo of this, and they're not investigating. All of these people deserve to burn in hell while they're skinned alive. The text of this says, while the media stories have stated that Epstein and Maxwell's victims were mostly teenagers, there is evidence that suggests they also abused younger girls. Jean-Luc Brunel, he is the modeling agency, the French modeling agent. He owned an agency in Paris. He's also suicided. He reportedly provided Epstein a birthday gift of 12-year-old triplets. Epstein victim, redacted, stated in the Netflix documentary Who Killed Jeffrey Epstein, episode 2, that when she worked as a receptionist at the New York mansion in about 1995, many girls, little girls, were always going in and out. A phone message slip referred to Russian lessons from 2 times 8-year-olds, and redacted in an expose from Australian television said that Epstein sought girls the younger, the better. Why are they not investigating this? This is just heinous. Heinous, heinous, heinous. This is not going away. Pam Bondi's a monster. This is like the type of stuff that, you know, when Nazis were brought around and asked, why didn't you knew what was going on, why didn't you stop them? And they said, we were just following orders. And we now say, we're sorry, but orders are not an excuse. Sorry, Pam Bondi, you have seen these files, listening to Donald Trump and having him say it's just a big Democrat hoax, and you continuing to follow along with that is not an excuse that the American people are going to forgive or forget. Here's another email. This one's strange. This one is, this is a forwarded email. This documents 2 children that were potentially strangled to death and buried at Epstein's New Mexico ranch. This was originally from a redacted Proton Mail account to a redacted me.com account. The subject being confidential Jeffrey Epstein. This was then forwarded from Freddie Argonne to somebody else. Okay. The email says, Edward, this is sensitive, so it will be first and last email depending on your discretion. You can choose to take it or trash it, but it comes from a person that has been there and seen it all as a former staff at the Zorro. The material below was taken from Jeffrey Epstein's home as my insurance in case of future litigation against Epstein. Sorry, no questions. What is damning about Jeffrey Epstein is yet to be written. Did you know somewhere in the hills outside the Zorro, 2 foreign girls were buried on orders of Jeffrey and Madam G. Both died by strangulation during rough fetish sex. Here's the video footage of Jeffrey Epstein, and he lists 7 different videos. That one is sex video with minor, another one threesomes video, another threesomes video, another underage girl sex video, underage girl Matthew Mellon video, another underage girl rape fantasy video, and girl from Bay Area suicide attempt confession to Madam G. And then it says, please arrange for 1 Bitcoin by 6 p.m. Eastern today, Thursday, November 22nd of 2019, to the BTC wallet address, and then gives the wallet, which has been redacted. So we have a lot of evidence. We have a lot of evidence that there was crime being committed. Now, people say, well, these are reports. They're not, there's no evidence of anything beyond the reports. They've got photographs apparently that are showing child porn abuse. Seems to me like the DOJ is trying to write it off as, oh, these were just child porn photos that maybe Jeffrey Epstein had in his possession. They weren't actually acts that he perpetrated or facilitated or arranged necessarily. I mean, I don't know what kind of excuses they're coming up with in their sick minds, but they're coming up with something because they're not doing any prosecutions. And now we've got people around the world, countries around the world are starting to open up investigations and prosecutions. I don't know if they're actually going to go anywhere. This seems like a limited hangout. They're going to let some people fall, but they're going to protect most of the powerful people because we're living in a 2-system government, and the powerful people get protected at all costs, even by the president of the United States, while children get abused. The country's under blackmail. This was all an intelligence op. And I think the thing that would be the most shocking for people, and the reason why the reason why the administration is so fiercely hiding all of this is because this clearly was an intelligence op, and probably an op that not only was perpetuated by Mossad, the Israeli intelligence, but also probably by American intelligence, the CIA. And if Americans discovered that the CIA was allowing the child abuse of young children, the sexual abuse and even murders of young children, in order for them to get to their intelligence goals, that would be the end of the CIA, as it should be, as it should be. And I am under the strong suspicion that that is why our government is hiding all of this, because our government, the deep state, the CIA, the intelligence, they have gone so rogue, and they think that torture is okay to get answers, and they think raping and murdering children is okay to get what you need for what? Matters of national security? No, we're not going to accept this. Thanks for watching this clip from the full Kim Iversen Show, which you can catch Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, for free at KimIversonShow.com. See you there.